welcome to Tullahoma's Cooking. I'm your host, Kelly Lepchinsky, and we're here once again today in my home kitchen. Now, yes, we could be in the studio today, but this is a recipe I have chosen to make at home, and what we're making today is a stuffed cabbage, or gołąbki. Now, the reason I've chosen to do this at home, there's about 3 of them. First off, as I'm recording, this is Father's Day weekend, which, as it happens, is also the weekend of my father's birthday, and this is one of his favorite dishes. So I did want to get that done this week. But I'm also going to be boiling cabbage in order to stuff the cabbage leaves, and boiling cabbage has a very distinctive smell, and it's one that you don't necessarily want lingering in the LightTube studios, which is very close to where customers come in to pay their bills. Now, it's not a bad smell, but it is going to linger a little bit, and it would be notable. And the third reason to do this at home is because although I have made gołąbki many times before in the past, this is going to be the first time that I'm going to do them this way. I'm trying out some new techniques with this recipe today, so if I don't get it right, nobody has to know. Now, that said, let's start at the beginning with the cabbage. Now, I have put a pot of water on to boil. It's not up to boil yet, but it's on the back burner there, getting ready to boil a cabbage. Now, what you want to happen when you put your cabbage in is you want the leaves to sort of fall off because of the boiling. What you don't want to do is to put cabbage into boiling water without knowing that you've got the water level right. You don't want to be putting a cabbage in and watch a bunch of boiling water come over the side of the pan. So before I got this hot, I went ahead and put the whole head of cabbage in there and got the water where it would cover the cabbage. I know right now, before that comes to a boil, that I won't be getting a lot of overflow when I take that cabbage and put it back in. Now, why didn't I just leave it in there right now? Well, because, and here we go with our handy dandy little makeshift counter that I bring in so often on this show. The reason I didn't leave it in the water is because we want to get rid of this core right here and let the water get in to a place in the cabbage where it can actually let those leaves separate and fall apart. So you're just cutting in a little bit just down to that center there, and there's one leaf already. Let's let that get in that water and soften up just a little bit. Okay, you get that core out, and I could probably stand to take a little bit more out of that, but you get that core and separate it out just enough that these leaves are no longer hanging on to this center, and they'll just come flying right off in the middle of a boil. Now, I haven't noticed ever if it makes any difference to have core up or core down, but I do like to try core down and let that get in there. Now, the next thing we'll have these leaves coming off of our cabbage. We need the filling, and that is going to be, I have right here 1.5 pounds of ground meat. It is a mix. This happens to be sold of beef and pork already sold together, mixed in a package. So we're just going to take that and put that into our mixing bowl. The next ingredient that we're going to have is rice. Now, this was 1.5 cups of uncooked rice, and I didn't fully cook it, but what I did do was sort of parboil it. Again, I'm going to try some new techniques with this recipe today. So I wasn't 100% confident that the rice would get fully cooked if I just put it in there raw. What I did was bring a pot of water up to a boil and put my rice in until it doubled in size, but was still very, very al dente. You wouldn't necessarily want to eat the rice like this right now. But we did get our 3 cups. In fact, this little bowl right here, handy dandy measurement, if you don't know, if you've got these little Pyrex bowls, turns out they hold exactly 3 cups. So I know my rice doubled in size because it filled that Pyrex exactly. And we're just going to saute, take about 1/2 stick of butter, 4 tablespoons of butter. Let that melt down real quick. And then I've got a medium white onion that I've already chopped that we're just going to cook until it becomes sort of translucent. We're just going to sweat them a little bit, add a little bit of chopped garlic. Now, I happen to really love garlic. This may have been 2, 3, 4 cloves. That's kind of according to taste. Any recipe is going to start off with 1 clove. Add more as you wish. And I've got an egg. So just like if you were making a meatball, a meatloaf, you're going to want that egg into your meat mixture. Okay. Got our butter starting to melt a little bit here. Just enough on the bottom of the pan that I think we can throw those onions in now. Okay. Like I said, that was about a good sized white onion. I say medium, but that was a pretty decent size now that I've poured it out. And just diced onion. Just get them in there and let them cook down. Okay. Throw in my garlic here a little bit early, but we'll do that right there. So we've got our onion and garlic cooking. Now I'm going to turn my onions and garlic up just a little bit because I do want to see just a little bit of browning on them. They are starting to look good and translucent, and they're sweated just a little bit. So we want to get just a little bit of browning if we can. Now take a look at our boiling water over here. It's not quite fully up to a boil. I didn't expect that it would be just yet. So we're going to take our first break. Okay, welcome back. I think I've got us just at the right time to catch a leaf. I know we can't see into this pan. I did think about mounting a camera overhead, but the steam would have gotten in the way anyway. So here's what you're looking for here. Now you can probably see I can pull some leaves out. I want to be careful though, I am using a ladle, so there's bound to be some boiling water captured. There we go. All right, you can see these leaves are just coming apart, and they're doing that in the water. Just section by section, it's coming apart in the water just like that. We're letting it do that. It's doing most of the work for us. Just let the water do the work. Now, you will get to a point where it's still kind of stuck to that core and the leaves won't come off quite as easily, and you will have to coax them a little deeper down into the cabbage. That's okay. Now, one of the first leaves that will come off the outer layer of the cabbage will be that very green, that very leafy green cabbage. You really want the white leaves of the cabbage for rolling, for your actual stuffed cabbage, so that what that leafy green one is good for is lining the pot. Now, today I mentioned I was going to do this in a little bit of a different fashion than I've normally done. Normally, when I've rolled the cabbage and I've got them ready to go, I have them in a shallow pan, just one by one, that I cover with tomato sauce and put in the oven at 350 degrees until they're done. That's not what we're going to do today. Today I'm going to try simmering them in a pot, and so to keep those cabbage rolls, keep those gołąbkis off of the direct heat in the simmering pot, I'm lining the pan with those very green leaves. Now, as I mentioned before, I've already boiled a couple of other cabbages and separated out those leaves. It's the white ones that we're going to be using today when we have our beef and pork mixture ready to go. Now, during the break, if you noticed, I'm lining the pot. I just had my onion and garlic in. I guess I should explain that. While I was waiting for the water to come to a rolling boil and actually get the leaves to fall off, our onion and garlic was finished. And it needs to come off and cool before I could put it in the meat. So I went ahead and did that. But I did something else while we were there. I added mushroom. This is yet again one thing I have not done before. Onions and garlic, yes, every time I make gołąbki, those go in. This time I added mushroom into the mix, and I could still feel this bowl is still warm, so I'm not quite ready to put that in there and mix it up with my hands just yet. But let's do some seasoning on our meat mixture then. What I have is salt, of course. Always season your meat, and this is about 2 teaspoons of salt. I've got about 1 teaspoon of pepper. And the bad thing about cooking meat raw like this is you don't get to taste it until it's done. The end, you don't get to sample as you go because you don't want to taste raw meat. So I'm sort of guesstimating here with some flavors that I would like. I want garlic powder and onion powder as well. I think I only did about 1 teaspoon of each, and I put them right in the same ramekin here because those are flavors I enjoy. And yet another flavor that I truly enjoy is marjoram, and I've told you this before in another episode. It's really a relative of oregano. It's very similar. I think actually I became familiar with it because of these stuffed cabbages, and I need to check that cabbage is what it sounds like. Got some rolling boil happening again. I can see leaf, just a little bit of coaxing right there, ready to come off. And I'm going to go ahead and grab some of these leaves. And I meant to bring this over earlier, but we're going to grab this pot right here because it's rimmed and can grab some of that liquid if we need it to. All right, so I've got some cabbage leaves I'm going to bring out so that the boiling water knows where to pay its attention. Get that head nice and soft over there. Let some more leaves come off. All right. Now you can see there is a good white leaf that we're going to want to roll. This is a more green leaf that we're probably not going to use for rolling, but we might line the pan with it. It looks like that's all the leaves that have come off so far. So let's take a quick look and see if I need to give it any more coaxing around the core. It looks like they are cut away. We're just not boiled down to that center yet, and that's fine. You just let them come as they go. Now, when we've got our cabbage completely boiled, we're probably going to save some of that water for later in the process. Right now, we're going to let these leaves get just a little bit cooler. We want them to be cooler to the touch, particularly on that inside curve, because we're going to have our hands up in there, and that's going to hold on to some heat. So let those cool down a little bit. What we're going to do is cut off these rims. You see where they come up right here. There's just a ridge. You don't want that ridge in your final cabbage roll, but you don't want to cut it off while the leaf is still that hot. Now, back to our meat mixture. Here we go. Mushrooms, onion, and garlic, all of that going in right on top. And of course, you still see some of that butter. We cooked it all in, going right in there as well. Let's see how that temperature is. Not too bad. I think I can handle that. Just get it all good and mixed in. You don't have to use your hands for this, but you know you're getting it all incorporated all the way through. You can see what you're doing. You can feel what you're doing. But it is going to be just a little bit messy. And, had I really thought about these quantities, I might have used a little bit bigger bowl. But there you go. All right, so let's see if we're at a point now. Yeah, these are good to the touch. So I didn't grab a paring knife. Let me grab one of those. And what you're just going to do is let the knife catch wherever the ridge comes above the leaf. It'll catch. It'll do it all by itself. And just scrape the knife down that ridge until you've got it completely cut off. Now this one's giving me just a little bit of resistance. And that's fine, it'll come off. And if you get a little, you can also do, if you get a little resistance or you don't want to cut the rims, you can just cut a little V shape, cut that rim right out of there. That'll work too. Unless, of course, you're doing it in reverse for the camera. And there you go. That is a leaf that is ready to go, ready to use. Here we go again, just on that top of that ridge. drag your knife down along that ridge until the whole ridge is gone and you have a nice, flat, even leaf for rolling. Okay, we've got our meat mixture that we'll be scooping by 2-ounce scoops. We've got our cabbage leaves rolling right along. And I started trying to do a little bit of math here earlier on how much meat and rice there was in here. And basically it comes down to there was 24 ounces of each. So I've got, what did I say, 24 ounces of each, 48 ounces of goodness here, not taking into account the mushrooms, onions, and garlic. With a 2-ounce disher, that means I should get 24 scoops, maybe a little extra for that extra volume from the mushroom and goodies there. So I need 24 leaves to be cooked down, cooled down, and I need these ridges off. So we're going to take a commercial break. I'm going to get the rest of the leaves that I need, and we'll come back to start rolling right after this. Okay, welcome back. I have what should be right around 24 leaves here that have gone ahead and trimmed those ribs off. As you can see, 1 or 2 cases I've had to cut the V in them. That should be just fine. And what you want to do is get your leaf sort of somewhat flat. Doesn't have to be completely flat, but just enough of a bowl to take your meat mixture. Again, with our 2-ounce disher here, number 16, just going to place a little bit of that meat mixture right there in the middle. Meat, rice, mushroom, onion, garlic. Sounds wonderful. And then just roll it up like a burrito. One side over, sides in, and roll it till you have your little pigeon. That's what Gołąbki means. And then tightly place that into your bowl on top of the leaf that you have placed there before. And we're just going to say tightly, it's the only one in there right now. There's nothing to be tight against. But once you've got more of these ready to go and stuffed and rolled and in your pot there, you just want to make sure they're all snug up against one another. Okay, little roll it like a burrito, leaf side down, tightly in against your other guy, and you're just going to keep doing that until you've used all of your meat mixture. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and make you watch me do 24 of these, so let me get this one rolled up. And it's just like working with a meatball, you know, just give it a little bit oblong, get it in there where it can be rolled, and voila. It's not hard at all. It will be a little bit time consuming, but we've already got 3 of them done right there. So it'll just be a matter of doing a few more of those. I'll come back. I'll do those during our next commercial break. I'm going to show you now the tomato sauce that we're going to put over the top. Now, frequently in my house, we did this with a Campbell's tomato soup or a spaghetti sauce. But today I'm going to try a tomato paste. And this is just a regular 6-ounce can of tomato paste. As I said before, I'm trying all kinds of new things with this recipe. That's what the kitchen is about. It's about experimenting and seeing what you got going on. Usually, these, as I mentioned before, I'd have lined up in an individual pan. And I'd just be pouring an already prepared tomato sauce, usually one that I've made myself from fresh peeled tomatoes. Today we're just going straight out easy and watering down a tomato paste. And we're going to do that with the cabbage water. Keep that cabbage flavor rolling, you know. So we're just diluting the tomato paste to create the tomato sauce. And that's going to be a matter of experimentation. I've never done this before. Tomato paste is something I usually add in to a spaghetti sauce or something that I'm making. I've never actually just reconstituted it to make its own sauce. But look at that. That's happening pretty beautifully right there. Now, for the way we're cooking these, and for the fact I'm going to have 24 of them, that may still be a little bit thick. I could make that just a little bit more saucy. So I'm going to add a little bit more of that cabbage water. And I think that's probably going to about do it, because one of the things I'm also going to be doing with this recipe, rather than throwing these into the oven to dry cook, I'm going to be simmering them in a stock. Now, it could be it could be a beef broth. We're using beef. It could be a chicken broth. It could be a vegetable broth. I don't really think it's going to make a heck of a lot of difference. In my case, I happen to have, from another recipe that we did earlier on this show, I had leftover vegetable stock and chicken stock, so I'm going to use both of those on my stuffed cabbages. And yes, I am going to make this just a little bit more watery. Now, this, because as I mentioned, we're going to be using a stock in that pot, it's going to get quite a bit watery when it gets in there with that. So I don't really need to make this too thin. It will get thinner when we add it to the pot. Now, we've got our cabbage water, we've got our tomatoes paste. What we really need now is to have all of our little pigeons in a bath. So I need to keep rolling those. I'm not going to make you watch me roll 24 of those. We will take another quick commercial break. When I come back, we'll add the stock and get this going right after this. We have now got all of our little pigeons lined up in a row, and they are layered. There's 2 layers of them now, all tucked in nicely. I think I came a little shy of 24. Looks like maybe 21, 22. That's fine, but the importance of using the disher, which I didn't mention earlier, that 2-ounce scoop every single time, means that they are going to be consistent in the amount of filling in each one, and they will cook evenly and consistently. So I've got now some chicken broth I'm going to throw in there with them. And I've also got a little bit of vegetable broth to go in there as well. Doesn't look like I'm going to actually finish off either one of these 2 broths today. But I'm just bringing the broth up to, oh, maybe I will, up to the level of our gołąbki. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, this is what they're going to simmer in. They're going to get a lid, but they're also going to have a little bit of protection on the top, just like they do on the bottom, by using some of these greener leaves that we didn't want to roll. Okay, we're just going to make a little capper for them there. And that also will give us some extra extra cabbage if we need it later on. Now, one thing I will say, shopping for cabbage locally, you saw the size of the head that I was using to get enough leaves that were large enough to roll. Some of these, you know, closer to the middle of the head there, the leaves that come off just really aren't large enough to do you a heck of a lot of good. You know, you start getting that small head there. So you've only got, you've got a limited number of leaves once you get the dark green ones off the inside, before you get to 2 dark green ones on the offside. You've got a limited amount there of leaves available to you. Once you've taken the dark green off the outside and you get to the very, very white but too small on the inside, it took me 3 cabbages, some of these I boiled yesterday, to get enough leaves. But if you can actually find a large cabbage, no problem. Also, if you want to make a smaller batch. Now, usually when I'm cooking at home for myself, I only buy 1 cabbage, and I do half the amount of meat and ingredients. And like I said, I usually fill one of these guys. I get about 8 off of a regular small cabbage, and just, you know, a work a day. These, because we're doing a holiday batch and I want to be able to share them with a number of people, this is going to be, you know, this took a little more cabbage to do, but it wouldn't have taken 3 cabbages if you could find the larger one. So if you've got a farmer's market you like, if you're looking at doing this recipe, do look for the larger cabbage. Now, as far as what gets left over, I just showed you, we've got what's left of this one here. The other 2 I disintegrated yesterday. But this isn't garbage. You can always find another recipe, another way to use this cabbage right here. You could actually make a dissembled sort of a gołąbki. If you just want to make your meat mixture and chop up some cabbage and throw that into an Instant Pot or a crock pot with some tomato sauce and have all those ingredients without the work of actually rolling the cabbage, you can do that too. But I'm sure that, you know, there's no reason to throw away what is still a perfectly usable cabbage. It's just not good for rolling anymore. They become too small. So we're just going to put those aside. I kept these aside to remind me to tell you that. Now, we are going to now let these guys come up to a little bit of a simmer. I'm going to get them a little bit on the medium-high side. And I'm going to let that broth come up to temperature, let them bathe a little bit before we add in the tomato sauce. After that half an hour, I'm going to come back and put this tomato sauce right in on top of all of that. And I'm going to sort of decorate it with some of these grape tomatoes. They're all going to go into the pot, into the simmering pot, and that's going to take another 2 hours. Now, there's no point in my coming back to show you just pouring tomato sauce into a pot. I hate to leave out showing you a step, but really, we need to wait a half an hour, put in the tomato sauce, and then cook for another 2 hours. So just know that that will have happened, and we'll come back when the entire cooking process is complete after this. Okay, welcome back. We are now at the final stage with our gołąbki. I didn't actually give them a whole nother 2 hours. I checked to see if they sort of felt done. I've also given them the little temperature check to see that they were good to go. And they did feel cohesive. Now, again, at that half hour mark, that first half hour mark in just the broth, I did add our tomato sauce right to the top along with some cherry tomatoes. And we'll try to get you a view of what that looks like right here. But that pot is hot. So see if we can't tip that just a little bit for you. There you go. That's our gołąbki. And we're going to give that a try. Our stuffed cabbage. Pull out one of these fellas here. Now they did hold together really nicely. And here you go. I've put him on a plate with some cucumber, a grape tomato, a little bit of sour cream, and I found a use for that parsley after all. Now, as I've said, usually I bake these. So I already can tell that this is going to be a little bit more moist than I'm used to with the gołąbki. That filling looks pretty good. Warm. Okay, I really like what simmering the cabbage has done for the cabbage. I actually prefer the cabbage this way. But I will say I think that simmering the meat recipe in the water just diluted the seasoning just a little bit. No surprise if you see me adding salt and pepper. I do think I probably, if I were going back to try this again, I would probably put a little bit more pepper right in that meat mixture. It does have, it picked up some of that tomato flavor really nicely this way. But it could use just a little more pop of seasoning. But there you go. There you have it. We have our stuffed cabbage. Good to go. Good to take to my dad to celebrate. Happy birthday. Happy Father's Day. That'll be over by weeks by the time this airs. But we really appreciate you watching. Thank you for being here with me for another edition of Tullahoma's Cooking. We'll see you next time.